Hi, this is Michelle McCumber. Many people know me by my website, deceptionbites.com, and from my book, The View Beneath. I've done many interviews and I've also written numerous articles. I have certainly not been shy about speaking out against the New Apostolic Reformation, the prophetic movement, and other false doctrine. I've also not been shy about speaking out about those things that I experienced and witnessed at Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. So I may be familiar to you, but I doubt the next name will be familiar to you. Because what you're going to hear is a phone call between myself and Dolly Webber. Now, Dolly Webber also worked for Jimmy Swaggart Ministries and saw many of the same things that I did and experienced many of the same things that I did. And she has until now felt um, maybe not at liberty to come out and say these things publicly. But she has agreed to do this interview by phone, so I'm excited about that. I consider Dolly a good friend. We met there, and she's probably one of the best things to come out of my time there. So,
Thank you, Michelle.
And just maybe tell us a little bit about how you came to JSM and what you felt your role there was going to be.
Okay. um, well, actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, Michelle, but back in 2003, when we moved to Springfield, Missouri, in going through the radio a little bit, I came across a program with Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, and I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't know he was still going, but at that time, if anything, was in a very positive vein concerning him. In fact, when I first heard about the incident back in the 80s, my first response at the time was, well, you go around the world preaching the gospel and see what comes against you. So I had no reason to be against him at the time. In fact, the opposite. Actually, when I sold my house in 2004, I gave more money to that ministry than I've ever given in my life out of the proceeds of the sales from my house and in New York State from where we moved. So I continued listening to the program. I did notice that there was a criticalness to the discussion that I heard.
Yeah.
But I knew that many times, from a watchman's point of view, from someone who is trying to be very careful with the winds of doctrine in going around in the name of Jesus, that one does have to be very critical. So that even more got my attention, and I began to, for the most part, be pleased with what I heard. They were coming against Rick Warren, and at that time, and other things. I just felt, no, I think they're trying to be authentic and trying to be careful with the Word of God. Well, in 2004, I heard something in my spirit, and do you know, Michelle, I've still never shared this with anybody what that was, but it was curious to me, and I didn't know for sure if it was the Lord's voice, but like I've done with anything else, I said, well, Lord, if that is you, then you'll bring it to pass. So I took that in, but it definitely did not direct my activities, direct anything about me. Um, and then I faced a crossroads after 2007, and it seemed that the Lord was getting me ready for a new something. I didn't know what it was, and He was shutting all other doors here in Springfield. And my attention was getting again back to Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, and I enjoyed the music a lot. I also would note people in the audience, people on stage. I felt the Lord showing me sometimes, giving me discernment about things in their lives, perhaps maybe. Sometimes they seemed heavier about, their countenance seemed changed or whatever. But I had this growing sense I was supposed to be going down there, but it seemed like, it'd have to be totally God. They didn't know me. I really didn't know them. there would be no reason in the natural that I would have a door open there unless God wanted it. And then around 2010, through a couple series of circumstances, they did know about me. They found out about me because of my experience in the software that they had just purchased, which is Great Plains.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I had been trained. In fact, when I was down there, I was the only one who had been formally trained by the company. Now, it was bought out by Microsoft, but at the time that the company that I was working for purchased it, it was not, and we were trained by the actual software company. And so the Lord opened the way for me to go down there, and I received a call after having gone down for an interview the summer before. That would have been 2009. Actually, Frances said she wanted to get together with me, and actually never even contacted me. The whole visit was a real disappointment. I'll say that. I flew down there, a single mom, but I just felt, well, okay, it seems like the Lord is going to be opening something here. So anyway, the door did come open January of 2010, and I sold most of my stuff or gave it away, literally a ton of stuff, to a homeless ministry, and went down there. I moved down there with my daughter, Abby, and at the time, and then Asher, my son, and Annie, one of my other daughters, came down to help us move, and Asher, of course, ended up staying not too long after that, and has really been down there ever since. But when I went down there, I knew that there was another purpose. I knew that there was something else. I wasn't just there to just go through the motions of. It wasn't just to go for a job. There was a special purpose, and I wasn't sure, but I did it onto the Lord, and also did with a full confidence that at the time, and this is what I would tell people when I'd answer the phone, when they talked about his fall, I said, well, only God knows what's in the heart of man. And whoever looks at a woman lustfully has committed adultery in his heart, or woman, or man. And Jimmy's just came to light. But I was very defensive about them even calling it a fall. I mean, I defended Jimmy to a huge degree.
Now,
And
I'm gonna just interrupt you here for a minute, and then I'm gonna ask you to pick back up in a second, okay? You came in January 2010, did you say?
I received the call from the director of the customer service department and finances and everybody that I can't remember what they call it, it includes the prayer lines, everything.
Yeah.
Donor services could have been. And physically did not, and I got the offer actually on the day that Gabe and Jill's second daughter was born. She delivered her by cesarean, but I remember that.
See, I didn't.
But I didn't actually physically go down there until March of the same year, 2010.
So I was actually there 2 years before you got there.
Yeah.
It's wild because I forget about a lot of the details sometimes, and but I just wanted to stop you there for a minute and just say that I had many of those same things happen to me before I went down. The Lord had cut off every other avenue, and I knew that I was getting ready to go somewhere and to do something, but I didn't know what. I felt like I was on pins and needles, and I remember, when that opportunity opened up for me, thinking, Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, I don't know if I want to be a part of that, because, all I knew is what happened, back in 88. And I thought, man, I don't want to be associated with that. But then, like you, I felt the same way. Well, if God's forgiven him, if he's asked for forgiveness and God has forgiven him, well, then who am I, to come against the Lord? And I I had friends in the discernment ministry that were assuring me that everything he was preaching was straight, biblical, biblically correct and right on. And like you, I listened to what they were saying, and I felt that same critical spirit. And I had that like a little twisting in my gut of like something's a little off here. But on the other hand, I felt the Lord pulling me there. So I thought it just didn't make sense. But I didn't realize that I had been down there 2 years before you got there.
Yeah, I know. I've taken note of that because after what I did end up going through and how to imagine that I met you in the midst, well, just at the very beginning of what
Yeah.
happened to me.
Yes.
So many times I thought, wow, Michelle, I can't imagine that Michelle was actually down there by herself and that you were for 2 years
Yeah.
experiencing what you did
It
at the
was
hands
rough.
of those people.
It was rough.
I mean, yeah, I don't know when I learned about that, but I've had a lot of admiration for you, Michelle, for having gone through it for a lot longer.
Well, I remember us meeting, and somebody, I think it was Amy Keeling, had said, you should meet Dolly. She's really smart, and I think you'd really enjoy talking to her. And of course, well, and I don't mean this to sound like it sounds, but a lot of people there were very one-dimensional. they, they just didn't go very deep, and it was hard to have a real conversation with people because there was such a hive mentality that people would repeat the same things. It was like talking to the same person. Like every time you'd talk to a different person, it was like talking to the last person you just talked to, because they'd use the same vocabulary, they'd use the same words, they'd use the same phrases, and it just was difficult to even have a real conversation with anyone. And I remember Amy saying, I think you'd really like Dolly. She's really intelligent. And I remember thinking, yeah, what, and like Charlie Brown, wah, wah, wah. And but then I did meet you on the stairs, and I started talking to you, and I thought, wow, she really is intelligent. And I thought, this is so refreshing. I'm talking to an actual person that's three-dimensional, and, like I felt like I could connect with you right away, and that we were on the same wavelength. And I think we were talking about William the Silent, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
I think that's what we were talking about. But, of course, when they see us talking on the stairs, because they're so terrified of people gossiping, I think in their minds we were, concocting something or coming up with a scheme against them. Very, very paranoid there. Like, honestly, clinically paranoid. I've never seen anything like it. And I've worked for a Fortune 50 company in a very good position, and never, ever have I seen that level of secrecy and paranoia. Like, honestly, I mean, you must have experienced that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the first prime example of that was after what I encountered working in the donor services. I did help with their financial end of it, but I also had the privilege of answering calls and contacts from people calling with inquiries about the various products. And one of the type of calls that we would get, which was notoriously clumsy for me, and I could see it was for everybody else, is when people would call and they'd ask about the specific songs. So they'd say, I'd like an album with Brother Swaggart, with this particular song, with him playing it, and I'd like it if it's instrumental. I mean, having all these parameters, and at the same time, they're going on and on about Brother Swaggart and how much he meant to them, and the details of that. And none of that did I want to handle carelessly or even insincerely. I wanted to listen to them, but at the same time, the only way that we in donor services had to really adequately and in any kind of timely way find the selections that they wanted was to use a physical paper catalog that had all of the listings of all of the albums, but the songs were listed in indexed at the back of the catalog. And for any song title, we would have to go to various different pages to inspect whichever album it was found. So you have numerous, you might have the same
Yeah.
song on
Extremely
6 or 7.
time consuming.
Oh, yeah,
Extremely.
and
And
awkward.
I know
And you're
for a fact that they were wanting to get you to rush you off that phone, because and I've talked to many people in donor services, many, and you're not the only one that says this. They want you to rush you off the phone. They want to get you, get the order and get them off the phone. You don't want to
yeah,
talk to them about, this ache and pain and whatever. And if they need prayer, get them to hang up and call the prayer line.
right,
Now it's a
right.
1-800 number if they're going to make a, if they're going to buy a Bible, if they're going to buy, make a donation, if they're going to, buy a CD or whatever. But if they wanted prayer, they'd have to hang up and call a
And then
number that
pay
they would have to pay for.
right, pay for it by themselves, right.
But anyway, I know where you're going with this, so go on.
Well, I had worked in the temp industry from the time I was before my freshman year of college through every single break. I went to Wheaton College. I lived in Maryland, so I would fly to college and fly home for the holidays or for summers. And I worked between two different temp agencies in the Washington D.C. metropolitan area, and I worked for some really awesome places, for everyone from Geico to General Electric, IBM, for a government agency, disabled American veterans, and then to private sector, to the local, you name it. And so I'd had a lot of experience, and typically, anywhere you are, well, for me, my goal has always been to do a good job in a timely fashion, accurately, and do it in a pleasant way with not only the customers, if there are some, and the people that I'm working with. So, and whatever tool it takes, I've never been in any company that would not embrace an employee doing whatever it would take within the
Oh,
confines of their experience
absolutely.
to do that job. So on every computer, you'll see the software called Excel. Whether
Yes, of
it's
course.
there's even one made for Macs, and so I immediately thought, this is a job for Excel. So if there was any break time between calls when I absolutely had nothing else to do, I would just go through the catalog and basically, I should say I added to it because that night, I think for 2 nights, I at home on my own time, which I obviously didn't get paid for and didn't want it. I was creating a tool for myself and also mentioned it to the girl that was helping me get acclimated to the office there. Her name was Megan Jenkins. When I told her about it, she was really excited. She said, when you're done with this, please give me a copy. Well, the tool is simply an enumeration of all of the songs, of song titles in every single musical product that is produced by Jimmy Swaggart's publishing. And so I did that, and I also could color code it based on whether it was an instrumental, if it was by Jimmy Swaggart or any other particular singer. This is all color coded and checkerboarded. And then Excel has a special feature where everybody would know this. You just go Control F, and in the blank that immediately
Yeah,
pops up, you
yeah.
put the song title. So in just less than 2 days, because I am fast, I can do this very quickly. Last I took the test, I was 95 words per minute after one error per minute. So that was after errors. So I'm fast. It didn't take any time. And by the end of that, I had an awesome, and not to my design, Excel is, it's a great software. But I had this tool whereby if anybody called up, I could still be gracious with them, but in a timely way, put in that little box whatever the song title they're looking for, and then immediately locate all of the instances of that song title. In one case, when I did that with a customer, and he said, I'll take all 6 of them, and he did. So when I finished this, someone told me, they said, make sure Terry doesn't see this. Now, Terry, by this time, was the head of donor services. The one who had hired me had mysteriously been,
Yes.
something happened to her.
Yes.
And she was kind of demoted.
Well, we all know about that, but.
Yeah. So I thought, what? I mean, who wouldn't want something like this? This will make, and I, by
Now,
that time,
can I just interrupt for a second? You showed me that, and I have, I've got degrees. I've got, I've worked in the corporate world. Excel is on, I mean, everybody in the corporate world that works, on a computer has Excel. It's not anything strange or mysterious and it worked. It was so, I mean, what you did was make the job so much easier. You made the fact that people could now look this up quickly and not have to go rustling through all these papers, wasting time trying to find something, which increased, sales of their, but somehow this got all turned into, like, I tried it. You showed it to me. I thought, this is brilliant. This is brilliant.
In the TV department, Brad Iverson asked me for the copy. He heard about it. He said, could you send me the file? He said, yeah, this is great. I mean, it's
anybody that has ever worked with Excel could learn that in like 1 second, not even a second.
Yeah.
It was so easy and fast. But anyway, I know where you're going, and you're going to say what this turned into, which is absolutely just unbelievable. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was absolutely no reason why a supervisor would not want this to be noticed and distributed to all of her staff, because suddenly a job which is clumsy, inadequate, and also they were briefer with the customers because they're frustrated while they're leafing through this catalog, and the customer is giving meaningful, boy, he's blessed me so much. Well, I wanted to respond sincerely to that. Yeah, praise the Lord. But when you're fumbling with a catalog and you're trying to get what they need, it was just all so problematic. And yet, instead of even, why would someone be afraid of that versus giving it to all of us?
Well, you were absolutely forbidden from using it.
Absolutely. Well, see, Terry never actually said that, but it came in an indirect way, not to say anything about it, not to give it to anybody. I was never actually physically told not to do it. That only came out through someone that she was a college student that she had shared that with, that she didn't like the fact that I came up with this tool. And the tool was merely their own information. It was only to do their job. I was already entrusted with thousands of dollar migrations coming in from the credit cards. She knew, I mean, it wasn't a matter of trust.
Well, it's absolutely asinine how they run that organization. I mean, it's the most wasteful place I've ever seen. And I think, honestly, if donors knew how it was run, they would be outraged, because there's so much waste. And this is why. And because here's somebody that's coming up with something very easy on their own time, but they don't want to embrace that because whatever reason. I never could figure it out. But here's the thing. They don't want to hire smart people there. They really don't. And they really, really dislike smart people. Now, you're okay if you're smart as long as you're working for them and you'll keep their secrets hidden. But
well, even then, I saw one person come in with a woman came in to speak with Jim Nations, and when she left, she had been in his office for probably a half an hour or so, and Jim came up to me and he said, I have a resume, and actually it was a portfolio. I didn't look inside of it, but it was an application and with some demonstration there that she was very interested in working for a ministry as she perceived it to be, and apparently had some sound proof that she was qualified to do so. And I went over to Terry and asked her on Jim's behalf, and Terry just said, we're not interested in that, and asked me to throw it away. So it
Yeah.
went right in the trash. Yeah,
And
I mean,
I saw things like that regularly. That's not anything out of the ordinary. It's
no.
they're not they're interested in people that a certain type of person, don't you think? And
Well, definitely.
and the
Like
thing
you
is,
said, if they're smart enough, but they're not going to talk when they see what
yes,
might be going on. Right.
yes, yes, that's one thing. But if they're smart and they have principles, that's not a good thing. You know,
Right.
you really have to. I don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words, but I've just seen people put into positions there and that had absolutely no, I'm just speaking, well, what was his name in the print department?
Caleb Barton.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm thinking of him. He had absolutely no experience at all. There were people in that organization with much, much more experience, but they knew Caleb wouldn't talk. See, they knew he wouldn't
Right.
talk. And
Well, in his case, I think there was actually more willing involvement in some of the activities that most believers would not want to engage in. So I
which
think,
most believers would not ever
yeah,
engage in,
right.
you
Now,
know.
getting back to Alfredo with the print shop, speaking of Caleb, on my interview, my trip, which I paid for myself, under the idea that well, it was a statement that if you are hired, then we will reimburse you for your trip.
Right.
And I never did get reimbursed
No,
for that
of
trip.
course not.
But on that trip, besides being very disappointed when basically Francis stood me up to get together with me, um, I did happen to meet. I did have a couple of interviews, obviously, and I got to meet Alfredo, who was a gentleman from Peru who had been a believer for many years, a missionary there. And
Very intelligent man too. I
yeah,
mean,
and speaking of experience, he had over 20 years in the printing field,
yes, yes,
not only as a printer per se, and not only as one who absolutely knew all of the intricacies of producing of the actual product, but he also knew the machinery as
yes,
well. So he knew far more than anyone there, by depth of experience and knowledge, and certainly by any length of experience. And at the time that I was down there, it was right at the last part of June, and I didn't fly back until after the July 4th of 2009. This would have been. I met Alfredo and his wife, and who was pregnant at the time,
yes.
And their daughter, and
They were such a sweet family. Just a
oh,
sweet, sweet family.
absolutely. Just you could just see and feel the love
I
of the
know,
Lord,
you really
and
could.
love. Yeah.
Yep.
And but Alfredo was very troubled because they were almost out of time before they would have to be thrown out of the towers at the time. The rule at the towers is that no guest can be there for more than 2 weeks, and there was another Hispanic family that had been allowing them to stay in their place, and then there was another couple. There were several people that would have allowed them to stay with them, but the rule of the towers was 2 weeks maximum. And though Alfredo had come, he had basically similar to me. I mean, what happened to me, basically paid his way to get out there, went up to the ministry because he had been influenced by the writings and teachings. I believe he had the whole, he did. I know he
Yes.
did have the
Yep.
whole catalog of all of the commentaries, and he went there to serve with the heart of as a missionary, and also hopefully with his background in the printing. And he was completely rejected for any job, and basically they were just waiting for him to leave, literally. And soon after I went back to Springfield, as Alfredo later told me, he went to Gabe Swaggart, and Gabe was the one that thankfully took action and basically told them they had to find a place for Alfredo. Not find a place like he's an inexperienced guy. It was like open the door for this guy.
Yeah, right.
So Alfredo was there, and then by the time I did come back as hired, I saw Alfredo, so I was glad his wife had the babies. By that time, they had twins, so now he had his oldest daughter must have been maybe 7 or 8 at the time. Now they've got 2 twins. So anyway, yeah, I that was just kind of segueing into the printing. I don't know where you want to go on the printing, but that's in comparison to Caleb. Here was this man who came with a heart to serve the Lord and wanted to do so. Really, any of us who went down there, it would have been, Lord, however you want to use me. I want to be in your will, as I'm speaking for myself anyway. Lord, even if you just want me to clean toilets, whatever it is. And I'm sincere about that. And I have had, in numerous places where I am, whatever my position is, I've removed trash. I've cleaned toilets. It doesn't matter.
Well, most of us were there, to serve. That we came there believing that it was a ministry, believing that, they really were serving the Lord, that they really were preaching the gospel, that they really were doing the things that they said that they were doing, that they really did love the Lord. But our experience once there was very, very different. And it's quite... I can't even explain the feeling, because I remember the feeling that I got when it dawned on me. And I remember it plain as day, and I went, oh no, no. And I actually got very angry with the Lord, and I'm just being transparent here. I said...
Well, when you saw that
it was not. Yeah, it's like it washed over me all of a sudden. Just it was like things added up, and then at a certain point, it's like, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, I remember when you told me about that at that moment, and at the moment, I can't remember what the incident, and I think that was before I got there that you had that.
Yes, I had already reached that conclusion well before you got there, and.
Yeah.
And it was, we became friends, but really we started talking about this, but rather tentatively, because I didn't trust anyone. I had been there for 2 years already, and I knew full well everything that went on there, and I just didn't trust anyone. So it was once I saw what they were doing to you, I think how we ended up talking about it is, I think we were downstairs and in that room over there where some people ate lunch and stuff. And I remember seeing what they were doing to you. I knew full well. I knew full well what they were doing.
Before I even told you.
Before you even told me, I knew. And so I remember telling you, it's not you. And I think I was trying to tell you without telling you,
Well, ironically, that happened, I believe, the next day after you and I were standing.
You know what? You're right, it did. You're right.
Huh?
Yeah, you're right, it did.
And because you and I were, when we started talking, work was fully over. There were still people in the building, but it was way past.
Yeah.
I'd already clocked out. It was way past that time. But the following day, some very bizarre things started happening to me, and only one of them was okay. My pattern is I love to work through lunch, but I also love computering, and I had asked many times. Terry there, is it all right if I just stay at my computer? I will log out and but I just have I had a book actually I was editing, and I love to write, and so it was fine with her, and that's what I did. Well, suddenly. Um, it could have been a group email or it was directed at me. You are not to work through your lunch and work on blogs or what, at the time I didn't even know what a blog was, literally. I mean, but I certainly didn't have a blog that I was working on. And it was like a sudden, okay, she already knew this. I was doing this by permission. Suddenly, it was just bizarre. And so that was, I think, the first day. Could have been the first day, maybe the second, because I think I had my computer. So it might have been the second day that I just thought, okay, I'll bring my laptop to work and do downstairs.
Yes, and that's something else that's interesting, that that's what would happen if, they would send this email around that, like, for example, well, that's going to take way too much time to get into.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so hard to kind of boil it down, because honestly, there's enough to keep us talking for probably
Well,
3 weeks straight.
why don't we talk about the printing, because in a way that's
Yes.
kind of like we've started the beginning, we've kind of alluded a little bit to the middle, but that was kind of the end part of that stage of what actually happened in the print shop. Do you want me to go ahead and just kind of take that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
um, maybe not say exactly how you ended up in the print shop, because that's a long story in itself, and
Yes.
I
No.
think we're going to have to go back and revisit some of this,
Oh
because
yeah.
there's so much. There is just so much. But yeah, at this point you're
Okay.
working in the printing, and I don't, I mean, I we
In the shipping. In shipping, I was
oh,
working in
okay, that's right,
shipping.
that's
Yeah,
right. You
which
were,
was
yeah, you never
adjacent to
worked in
the print
printing.
shop. Yeah.
But the interesting thing was, we were aware of different things going on, but I think that the worst thing that they could have done was to send you there, because
Mm-hmm.
until that time we couldn't put it all together. like
Uh-huh.
like I had, and I think they like to make it like we were conspiring together, and they've even alluded to the fact, and well, not alluded, they've actually come right out and said that I was working with John Camp. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Or that I
You
was
did contact him way after the
way
fact.
after,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so, and John Camp, by the way, is the gentleman that worked for CNN that broke the Jimmy Swaggart story back in 1988. He's
right.
he still lives in Louisiana. So I did contact him like a long time afterwards, but yeah, they like to say that I was working with John Camp. And the other thing is, they actively, and I know this for a fact, they can't even deny it, they actively told people that I was a witch, and that I had been sent there to bring down the ministry, all sorts of things. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, and just like any other accusation that seems to come out of that place, whether from the pulpit or from on the lower level, it's usually indicative of something that they are guilty of.
abs every time. Every
Yeah,
time. It's
yeah,
like, as soon as this stuff came out about the printing, the hip hop stuff, all of a sudden they're on there preaching against hip hop, where when we know full
right.
well that some of them listen to it.
Absolutely,
I
and
mean,
pray things for it.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Alfredo and his wife and his two babies and his daughter lived in the towers as my daughter Abby and I lived. And by this time, they were beating him up, proverbially speaking. They were very unkind to him and ostracizing him, as they tend to do anyone that is a true believer that comes out, that has faith, and that they perceive may not easily be shut up or bought
I
off.
have the email proof of that, by the way, of how they were abusing him.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes,
I don't think I even saw that.
you may not
Well,
have.
I talked with him. I would see him on campus. I would see him in this one instance, which I can still picture where in the elevator. Now, those elevators everywhere in that place is completely under camera, some of which is audio and
Yes.
camera, and some of which is just video. But we were on the elevator, but I was still talking quietly. This is on his side of the towers, his and his wife's. And I'd ask him occasionally, do you see anything weird going on? What's going on? Well, this one time he still quietly, we're on the elevator by ourselves, but he told me, he said, you wouldn't believe what they're printing. And I said, really? And Alfredo was a very holy man
He
and
really
very,
was.
yeah, I mean,
He
you just
loved the
can't,
Lord. I mean,
oh,
and you could see it exuded from him. I mean,
yes. And he's serious about it. I mean,
oh,
he's not.
absolutely.
And what they were printing, based on the expression on his face, it was not good. And I just remember saying, "Really, can you?" Well, he told me as much that it was he saw the proofs of them. So the print shop, every time they would, before they would make a run, they would run a proof,
Yeah, right,
just to make sure that it was a sound reproduction of what they
right.
wanted to print. So I said, "Can you save one the next time you see one?" And that's all the conversation that we had. But he nodded yes. So that's all, and I thought, okay, Alfredo, come on, because I'm gung ho on this stuff, but everybody there is so fearful. I mean, and with
Oh
the
my
cameras
gosh,
and
I
everything,
never
I mean,
saw
there's
anything
fear.
like it.
Oh
Everyone,
yeah,
they, in fact, the executive offices, where I worked, they called it the mausoleum, right?
yeah, oh yeah, I've heard of that. I mean,
Yeah,
even writings from the past. Oh yeah,
that's
and
right.
people
Yeah, people
from
from the
years
past have
past.
even said that. Yes,
Yeah, very
it's
stiff. You don't want to laugh.
you
You don't even
literally.
talk.
I remember going for lunch and just feeling so light and joyous and a wonderful day, the sun's shining and everything, and you come back into that place and it's like something just pulls it right out of you.
Yes,
It just,
yes.
I've
Oh,
never seen anything like it. I really haven't.
absolutely. I know. Well, one day after, by now I was in the shipping department. We can go into that another time. I mean, anytime I actually think about what went through me, what I went through at that time, um, there's a heavy oppression. So it was very real, and I just have to ask the Lord when and how to talk about it, because it's pretty diabolical. But so I'm in the shipping department, actually enjoying it. What the devil intended for evil, the Lord made me about the fastest packer there. Um, and I put out a lot of, I enjoyed it. Again, the fast and accurate kind of thing in me. And after 5 o'clock, rather than just going out, going back to the towers, I went back where the snack shop was, where there were free snacks for anybody who wanted Debbie cakes and stuff like that. Well, Alfredo had come on because he worked, I think, like 4 o'clock to whatever time at night. And he was standing over something on one of the counters, and I noticed it looked like it was a proof. And knowing that we're under camera, I just nodded. I said, "Is that one of those?" I mouthed it, and he said yes, and it would have just gone right into the trash. So I said, "Can I have it?" So I just said, "Roll it up," and he gave it to me, and I took it home, and I
And
scanned
I
that.
want to just emphasize that it was in the trash, right?
Well, it would have gone into the trash. It was in the area where many of them would just leave them there. Sometimes just take it to the trash, or sometimes not. But he knew that would have gone to the trash. He
Okay,
often
okay,
put these in the trash because nobody else would put them there. But they were trash.
okay.
It was not part of the produced run. It was clearly something that was produced ahead of it, and left in a place where it's trash. And Alfredo told me how many times he was the one that would take the trash out. So it
Well,
was
of
part of
course.
his job, basically. Yeah, to remove something like that. So, but at this time, you and I were wondering, okay, there seem to be a lot of people that we're really they're not here for entirely for the Lord. That's very clear. But
Oh,
they
that was
still had a
very
certain
evident. Very
yeah, they
evident.
still had a certain amount of thinking that Jimmy Swaggart,
See,
would pick.
that's the thing. Most of us, well, all of us really would that knew about some of this stuff would see it, but we all were under the impression that the Swaggarts didn't know, right?
Surely, yes, yes. And after scanning that, I sent it in an email, and man, I really can't. It ended up obviously reaching your office, but I had your home email address. My computer must, you know how sometimes it'll auto-populate the first address that comes in, and there's no way, in some computers,
Yes.
there's no way of doing that. But anyway, it was sent to your email at work. Well, they had been
Monitoring.
spying on you and having your email sent to someone that was at that time. I mean, you and I
At
weren't
that
even.
at that
You
time,
were,
they had my office bugged. They were listening to my phone, and they were having a copy of all my emails sent to them. And so, if I was sending an email to my mom or something, they would get a copy of that without me knowing, and be able to read that and see what I was saying because they were so paranoid of what I knew. And of course, I, you know, I don't know why they would think that I would be so stupid as to have it on my computer if I did know something, which I did. But yes, they were monitoring me very carefully for that
and
reason.
I will add. I mean, to those were really really tough days for you because, and someday you will be able to tell more of your story of the tactics that actually are used in torturing when you shun somebody and they
Yeah.
were literally having everyone in that floor. Even
Yes.
well, you were a very friendly person. Everybody loved you when you came, and they had you now at a point where no one was even allowed to talk to you, and that was
They'd
the state
actually
of
run. If I went into the bathroom, the other ladies would all exit very quickly.
right. And you're staying. You're the same Michelle. You're loving. You're
Well, I couldn't
bubbly.
understand because it was like night and day, and it happened literally overnight that
Yeah.
no one would speak to me. And actually, I had somebody from the donor services call me at home and say, I'm sorry, I don't want you to think that I'm, whatever, but I've been strictly warned that I'm not to speak with you.
Yes. And then someone who later, we don't have to name her, but she was concerned, even though you had spent hours and hours and hours and days, many times laying awake because of a dangerous situation she was in, a marital situation, and you
Yes.
had poured and poured into this individual's life, who is still there today.
Yes.
But she informed you
That I was
that
bad for
for
her
this,
career.
yes. And so she too shunned you from that point on. For no reason, nothing that you had done.
And would
Except,
literally, actually, when I walked by, would turn her chair all the way around so her back was facing me.
wow.
Yeah. And not only just that, but had people literally snickering. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I mean, I'm managing all the website stuff at this point, a webmaster and doing
Well,
graphics
you
and
not
things like
only
that.
managed them, you created them. They had virtually no
I know.
website at all. They had a very shambly kind
Oh, I
of a
know.
website. You made the websites.
I know.
So you created and managed. So let me add
Yes.
that. You created them, Michelle.
Yeah.
All of them. I mean, Gabe Swaggart's, Francis's,
Yeah.
Crossfire, but initially the JSM one.
Yes.
You brought life, a living presence of that place
And my
into
desire
the
was to serve the Lord. I mean, I
yes.
was there to serve the Lord. I really thought that the Lord had brought me there to support that ministry. I didn't know that it was for another reason. I really didn't.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I found out, and it devastated me because I really honestly wanted to believe that this was a good ministry, and that they were serving the Lord and they were doing what they said they were doing, and but
Because
it's
you
devastating.
actually come out of another
Yes.
another and thinking, well, you finished, you have gone through the
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Now you're going to be refreshed with the good.
Yeah, I had
And
come out
here's
of
your relief.
Rick Joyner's church and had come against that and had stood against that. And I remember it's so funny because Frances Swaggart had me on her show a couple times talking about my experiences with Morningstar. And I've since written a book about my experiences with Morningstar called The View Beneath.
I met.
And so, she had said she obviously, was interested in that and was against it as well. But I remember the day that I don't know if you were in there at that point or not, when she said to me, well, I knew that I shouldn't have hired you all along because you had troubles in your last church. And I said, what? And I said, I didn't have any troubles. Are you talking about Morningstar? And I said, that's a cult. And she said, well, that's what you say. And I remember
You know
thinking,
what? I think that was when you and I had our friendly exit from her. I think
yes,
she did say that. Yep,
yes.
I just remembered.
Yes, and
Wow.
I remember thinking, wait a minute, you had me on your show like talking about this, but now all of a sudden you're defending Morningstar and Rick
Yeah.
Joyner. It blew my
Yeah.
mind. Like it really blew my
Wow.
mind.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? Because you and I have not even talked about that since
No,
that
that
meeting.
was
No.
just
It's whatever needs to be the truth for the moment. Truth, there is no truth. It's a variable. It's an existentialism that whatever you want truth to be for
that's
that
right.
moment to serve that purpose, then
That's right.
that's what it is.
That's exactly it. That's exactly how it's run there. And these people don't know what truth is. They really don't.
No, it's
And
written. It's written by the top, and as long as they know what the script is and they at least smell it, even if they have any questions, then they're good.
yeah.
They're fine. Yeah. Well, after I
Oh,
sent you
and
that
wait,
email.
wait
Oh,
just a
go ahead.
second. And I want to just say that how it was on my end, because at that time they had hired an assistant for me. Well, she had been hired. Basically, it was me pushing and pushing to get her hired because they wanted to hire someone else. It was a lot of work for one person. And
Right. For you and the art department. So she was
yeah,
going to be shared
yeah, yeah.
with you and the art department, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she had just started. And I remember she was sitting with me because I was showing her what to do. She had her degree, but she, had not done much with, web work. So I was teaching her that point, and she was picking up very, very quickly. And at that point, your email came across and it beeped or whatever it does. I can't remember now, but I knew that when email came, and so I flicked it up so that I could just look at it real quickly. And I remember seeing, because you sent me some of the pictures and I went, "Oh my." And I remember deleting it right away
Oh,
because
really?
yeah, because I was like, this fear just crossed because I just clicked on it, it flipped up, and then I'm seeing these pictures and I'm going, oh my. And
Oh,
so I
yes.
deleted it right away, and I remember looking to the side at her, and I don't know if anything was said or not. I can't remember. I can't remember about that, but I just
If
remember
she
this
said
fear.
something,
Yeah, or if I looked at her to see if she had seen or what, but I remember this fear crossing me. Like, oh no. Because I knew I was
wow.
being monitored, but I
Yeah.
didn't know my email was being sent to them at that point.
Well,
So,
anywhere I've worked, I've always considered it's public.
oh,
Any email is public, and so that's why I was, looking back, even just days after when I found out later that you got it or it was sent there. I would never have done that because I don't do that when I'm working for a company. It is for them. I do it as unto the Lord. And
yeah.
if there are some where if you work there, you don't punch your time clock and you're taking business trips and everything, then email is going to be more of a loosey goosey kind of thing in those
Well,
instances.
and
But
I was on salary. I wasn't
yeah,
an
yeah,
hourly.
you were salaried
Yeah.
and I was not. I was hourly.
But here's the thing, yeah, I mean, whenever I've been in a corporate job, I've always considered that anyone can see my email, but they don't really, unless they, I mean,
unless they need
let's
to
say
look, yeah,
suspect you of something, but
exactly,
the
right.
odd thing was, the thing that I find most humorous about this, and it's not humorous, it's actually very sad, but um, I did not know about the printing at all until you sent that to me. You had said something to me, just basically that I think something not so good's going on in the printing department. But until that email, I really did not understand the severity of it.
Yeah.
And
Well, you and I hadn't even been talking that much. You were going through a ton
I was
with
going
the
through a lot,
emotional
and literally,
torture they were putting on.
yeah, and that time was difficult because, and I apologize for that too, because I know at some points I had to like just cut you off because I was so overwhelmed with it that it was like I can't talk about this anymore. Like it's so horrible. I
Oh
can't
yeah. Well,
stand
no,
that
I
I'm in
mean
this
we were both.
situation, and we're
Yeah, we were kind of both in our own things. I mean,
we
you were
were
full
both in
time
our own
dealing with,
living
yeah.
hell, like there really, and so at times I just felt so, burdened that
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't
And
deal
you
with
were
it.
still in the heat of it. Now, where I was by that time in the shipping department, at least it wasn't, there was a little bit of fluidity to it. I had really impressed actually, Francis Swaggart's brother-in-law, Dennis Westcott, and he had told me once, he said, well, if you're trying to impress me, don't worry, you already have. I think I put out like 700 units that day myself, and so it was a little funner. It was actually kind of fun, and even though it had its very bizarre atmosphere, it was not as bad as where you still were, and you were still dealing with the same people that were not
Oh,
to get
and
off
being
on this
treated
tonight.
like
Oh yeah.
I've never ever in my entire life been treated that way
Oh, the
ever.
tactics, like asking you, you send a question and deliberately the person that could answer the question because you need it in order to do something that somebody else has asked you to do, they deliberately wait on that email to make you wait for an answer that could be shot up quickly with an
Oh
email. And
yeah.
you know that there are, I mean, that kind of, these are the kinds of tactics that I,
It's sabotage really. They I've never seen, honestly, such a bunch of children. I mean, they're all vying for the attention of the Swaggarts, and it's just, I don't, I
well, and
honestly don't even
actually,
have the words to describe it.
speaking about that, that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't like my Excel document with all those colors.
Exactly,
Because do you remember
exactly.
you said you noticed right after that when they told me to hide it and don't use it, they used the exact same format to put the programming. And I think a modification of that is there even today up to show all of the programming for an entire
Oh,
week.
it's
And there it
crazy.
was. It was the Excel document with the coloration. They didn't want to. Yeah, you're right. They wanted to have the Swaggarts think that the only smarties were the ones that were already in place, and anyone that had come to work for the organization
Was
was really
stupid
just,
and
oh,
yeah, like
yeah,
just yeah.
beyond.
And the thing is, it's the people that came to the organization that gave up a lot and moved there, sometimes from different countries like Alfredo, and
Yep,
had just given up so much to be there because they felt that they were serving the Lord. And these people were giving their all, really working. And those
amen.
seemed to be the people that were dumped on all the time.
Right,
And it
and I
was the
believe
people
there's a
that
pleasure
were,
in it.
yeah, there was, yes, there was great pleasure done in that, and
Well, I
making
think it was.
people really subjugating people and
Right.
I don't know what you would call it.
No, that was the word that actually came to me too, subjugating. That they enjoy delineating, making a very clear delineating line between the ones that are on the top and the ones that are on the bottom, and there's nothing in between. It doesn't matter what value you are to the organization, what you're contributing. I remember I was there when they for the first time they passed the $1 million mark for
Yes, I remember
marathon.
that.
And so all of us women in the donor services, everybody was cheering and everything. And Frances came out. She was smiling and everything, but Nikki seemed to take pleasure in coming out and saying, "Okay, now go back to work. Go back to work."
Oh, I
She
know,
wanted
I know.
everybody to know that she's the sergeant, and a very childish, unnecessary. I'm not talking about a protracted amount of applause or anything. These were adult women. These were believers.
Yes.
These were women that were doing their job well and sincerely,
Well,
and not treated as such.
I've never seen anybody treated like I saw people treated there ever in my life. And
No,
I've
oh
been,
no,
I mean, I've been working since I was, I think my first job was at 12. And I mean,
probably so. I could believe it, Michelle.
yeah, I mean, and I've always held, and sometimes I've held two and three jobs at a time. And
I know.
so I've never ever seen people treated like that. They were treated like they were kindergartners, that they didn't have
Yep.
a mind, that they had to be told and had their hand held. And everything was watched, and they put all those cameras in there that watched everyone at their computer. And I'm thinking, it's not like they're dealing with money or anything. Like, what are they watching? Like, it just was so bizarre. And,
Yes.
and the audio, even, they could hear what people were saying. And because they were just so terrified of people, they never wanted to see people talking. Don't ever talk, because they were always terrified of what you might be talking about.
Oh,
And
and every company I've been in, a quick chat, a chatter along your way, or a quick comment to somebody, it can be, and it's even clinically proven that a short pickup, a short word of encouragement, or a quick smile, or a laughter, all of those things are productive and positive towards a very efficient and proficient working environment. But you're right. I saw the same thing in the same sterility, like not seeing. I
oh,
mean, it
it
was.
was literally, I mean, I remember, because a lot of people used to come into my office all the time when I first went there. They would always, because I remember when I first got there, everyone saying how different I was. Oh my gosh, it's so nice to see somebody smile, that somebody,
Uh-huh.
you always look so happy. And I mean, I would get these things all the time, and I thought, well, you know, that's why is that odd? Like, why is that so different?
Yeah.
And people would come, especially the younger ones, would come into my office there and just say hi. And sometimes the one would, on her lunch hour, she would just sit there on my couch, and she wasn't bothering me or anything. She would just sit there and sometimes, talk to me as I do my work or whatever. Because especially when you're doing graphics, I can work and do graphics. I mean, I can talk and do graphics easily. And so that would happen all the time. And then it was, nobody was to talk to me. Oh, her job's important. You can't, under that guise, like, oh, don't
Yeah.
bother her. Don't bother her. She's got all this work to do. And, she can't be bothered with people in her office and this and that. And then it was, don't even speak to her. You're not to speak to
Yep.
her. And, it was just bizarre. And always, I mean, wherever I've worked, as you're passing a row of desks or whatever, you say, hey, good morning, or how you
Yes.
doing, or how's your husband doing, or whatever, you
Absolutely.
know
Yep.
but not there. You just
No.
weren't. And I remember when my mom first came to see me there, and they literally were just all over her, like, oh, we love your daughter. And I remember Jimmy said, and my mom would tell you the same thing. Jimmy said, oh, up, you can take up to half my kingdom, but don't take her. And I
Yep.
mean, things like that. And
Yep.
Frances was
Says
so,
that.
and I remember Frances was so nice to my mom, and my mom right after said, Michelle, there's something not right there. And I said, no, 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 that she was being sincere. And my mom said, Michelle, I mean, my mom's taught school for all her life. She taught school. And
Yeah.
she says, Michelle, come on, something's not right here. And Donnie came up to her. I mean, everybody. Well, the second time she visited, that was after. nobody was to speak to me. Everybody shunned me. Everybody would run away from me. If they saw me coming down one hall, they would go down the other.
Yeah.
You know, I literally was so uncomfortable that I had to start using the bathroom downstairs, where nobody
Yes.
went, because I was just so uncomfortable. People would, you know, whisper when I went by. I mean, it was just bizarre. And
Well, even just as a quick side note on that, a couple of years ago I was reading about shunning, and actually it had to do with another incident that I was reading about. That is a form of torture.
well, it's a way to bring people in line, because it either brings them in line. That's what the Amish do. And it literally can break you down mentally.
Yeah,
Um, be,
that's what I'm
and
talking
it
about.
either,
It, to
it,
suddenly having no human contact when they are there, it does something to you.
oh, I
Which, okay,
know.
go ahead with what you're saying, but what you went through was extremely
It was
emotionally
extreme.
breaking. I
Yeah,
can't
it was.
imagine.
It
Oh, it
was.
was because it happened to me a little bit after, jumping ahead in time, which I won't, but I experienced it with, I remember with one person and how that felt. Where
Yeah.
suddenly it's like you are Raka, you are dog, you're dirt, and
Well,
there is a message that was sent to you by that, which was horrible.
I had someone actually apologize to me years later, and they said, "I'm so sorry." Like, and they said, "Do you remember the night that I was with a group of people, and you know, at Copeland's, actually it was, and the restaurant there in Baton Rouge."
Yes,
And
uh-huh.
I said, "Yes, I remember that very well." And I said, "I remember it because I you know, I used to, you know, I'm very, very humorous. When you know me, when I feel comfortable with people, I mean, I just tend to make people
Yes,
laugh.
you can be
I
wacky.
mean, yeah, like I've really got a sense of humor, and I generally will, you know, make people
And you
laugh.
play along with other people doing it to you. I love it. You can
Yes,
dish it and you can take it.
yeah,
We love you, Michelle.
and thank you. But I remember her saying to me, "Do you remember that?" And I said, "I do," because I could tell that she was just seething. She was just staring at me. And I remember thinking, I don't even know this person. Like, I don't understand why is she, you know, treating me like this? But she said, "I'm sorry, but I was told that you were a witch. I was told that I should stay away from you because you were a witch." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me." This is the first time I had heard that. And I said, "You've got to be kidding me, right?" And she said, "Well, now that I know you and I know the whole story and I know everything that's gone on there, I mean, it's ridiculous, but I apologize, but I had nothing to go on, so I believed it."
I think I remember this. At first I didn't, but I think I do remember. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I forgot about that. So
But
much.
I wanted to tell about when my mom, and we were talking about my mom, and she lives in she lived, well, she does live in Canada, and she would you know, fly down to see me wherever I was in the States. And so she flew down the first time, and like I told you, they were all, you know, gushing over her and whatever.
Yep.
And the second time, it was, I don't know, maybe a year and a half later. Well, this is after everything had gone down. And there was bad weather that day. Really bad weather. They were expecting tornadoes, and you know, the weather in Louisiana.
Yeah, oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it can be violent. And so Mom's not used to that. I mean, she's from Canada. We don't have, you know, any weather like that. I mean, a thunderstorm here is nothing. And so she was very nervous about staying by herself at my place. And I
Uh-huh.
said, well, and Frances had always been so gracious about, you know, my mom and whatever, and, you know, asking about her and everything. And I said, "Well, you come to work," because I had a big office. I had a at that time I even had a bigger office because I had been moved at that point, and I had a huge office
Yeah.
with a
It's
couch
nice.
in it and everything.
Yep.
And actually, I liked that office because it had the palm trees right outside the window and everything.
Oh,
But
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it looked out over the front
yeah, the
of
front and
the
the palm
administration
trees
property.
and
Yep.
stuff, and it was just very, very peaceful in there. But my mom came and she, sat on the couch there and she read and she didn't open her mouth. She just sat there and read. And she got up to go to the bathroom and she knew that people knew who she was, certain people that will go unnamed. And they shunned her the same way that they were doing to me. She came back to the office and she said, Michelle, what is going on? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, no, what is going on? And I said, well, I told you that things were difficult here. And she said, okay, something's really odd here. And so I said, well, we'll talk about it later. And so at that point, one of the students came in because he used to come by because I had this coffee that is only available in Canada. And he loved this coffee. And I'd always have the coffee pot on. And I said, well, stop by anytime and, grab a cup.
Yeah.
Because
You're
I always
like that with everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody could ask you for anything, Michelle. You're always been so kind.
Well, thank you. But I mean, I just had that in there and he'd stop by and sometimes other people would stop by and I'd say, oh, grab coffee, whatever. And so he stopped by for a cup of coffee and he saw my mom sitting there and he was talking to her and just welcoming her and saying whatever. Well, Terry, the head of donor services, literally, it was almost like a child being grabbed by the ears and pulled out. And it was so obvious. I mean, it was so bizarre.
Yeah,
And I remember my mom being so horrified. And that night when we were back
at tell him what she did.
Oh,
and I think I know the male guy that you're talking about.
Oh yeah, What
did Terry do? She
I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was very forceful. I mean, very forceful. It would be like somebody grabbing the ears of a child and pulling them out. That's the equivalent. Right. And so my mom that night, she was so upset. She said, Michelle, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. And she was on the phone with my brother and she said, we've got to get her out of here. And I remember saying, Mom, like, it's all right. And she was like, please talk to your sister. Talk to your sister. Talk some sense into her. Like, she's got to get out of here. Like, it was that she was that alarmed.
Yes, I can believe it. I mean, I would have been as a mother watching yes.
And my mom's not an alarmist. I mean, the farthest thing from it.
She's a very objective, straightforward
Very, very, very. She's an intelligent woman. She's very objective. And she would be the first one to say, Michelle, like, come on, you're not seeing this the way you should be. Right. But without me saying anything, she experienced it. She visually saw it, and she was absolutely alarmed.
Yeah, I bet.
And she was worried about my mental health. It was like, you can't work in an environment like that. It's not healthy.
Right. Well, when you have a soft heart and people are doing those kinds of things to you, it can't do anything but traumatize you.
And people that you've never harmed. People that you've only been kind to.
Right.
That's what I didn't understand. Like, I've only been kind to these people. I don't understand why I'm being treated this way. But the third time my mom came, I remember that she would stay at my place. Oh, and after that happened, they sent around a memo saying that we were not allowed to have visitors in our offices. I mean, it was just, Terry sent it around. It was like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. But I remember the third time she came, and she said, well, I'll be sure. Like, she was, at that point, she'd had it with them. It was like, and she says, well, I'll be sure to stay away this time. And
who did she say that to?
To me, she was just being sarcastic, like, oh, I'll be sure to stay away. And she said, like I would come home for lunch, and it was so nice because she'd have mothers are so great, but anyway, they are, because she stayed for a while, to get away from the winter in Canada, and I'd come home and I love egg salad sandwiches. I mean, I like adore egg salad sandwiches. And when I was in
hate egg
college,
salad sandwiches.
like they'd have these 99-cent egg salad sandwiches, and every single day I'd have one, and people were like, "Don't you ever get tired of egg salad sandwiches?" And I said, "No, I never do ever." And
That's
so
funny.
so every day I'd come home to an egg salad sandwich.
Oh.
And I'd sit there and I'd eat my sandwich and I'd cry. And she said, "Michelle, like every day you come home and you sit and you eat your sandwich and you cry." And she said, "I can't bear this. I cannot bear this as your mother." And I
Yeah.
said, I know. Like I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to let her see the pain that I'm in. But it
Yeah.
was like I would come home. It would hit me every day because I'd come home and there's your mother who loves you and she's being kind and she's feeding you this sandwich. And it's like
Yeah.
I would be overwhelmed because it was the difference between how I was being treated and how, you come
Yes.
home and there's this kindness, and it would make me weep. Like I'd
Yeah.
just start to cry.
Yep, that's how dark that place was. And that's
Exactly.
how absent it was of the love of the Lord. And with the irony, I remember if anyone was playing any of the whatever was airing on JSM, occasionally someone might have it down on low. So on top of that, you've got the irony of these songs that are
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
and exuding
The love
about
of the Lord, and you're like,
about the love of the Lord, and
and
you've
all you
just
can feel is
received
the devil.
a nasty stare.
Yeah.
You've just read an email like that, which as it is come out of the blue, is obviously targeted in a very wicked way. I mean, this is not a reasonable place. Policies are wonderful. As a mother of 7 kids, I appreciate the value of policies, and as you do
Absolutely.
too, you manage
Absolutely.
places. So we're not talking about the
The
efficacy
rules and
of
the
having
no,
rules
no.
and regulations. We're talking about things that are using the modality of making a rule, which is not really for making rules, but it's for targeting. It's for making another kind of a point, and
Well,
it was done in a manner which was not as loving as you would get in the corporate world.
no,
It,
no, no, no. Like,
no,
I mean, I would just never see this stuff in the corporate world, and
no, oh no,
um, people just didn't behave that way. And the weird thing is that there were rules, and I appreciate rules. I understand they have to be there. Every corporate place I've ever worked has had a set of rules, but here's the difference: the rules were there for everybody. And it didn't
right,
matter who you were, if you were an executive or if you were, cleaning the bathrooms. The same rules applied to everyone.
right,
But there, it did it. The rules were different depending on who you were,
yeah,
and the rules could change every
absolutely,
day. So you never
yeah,
knew what the rules were because every day they changed. And
right.
like you would get an email come around, like I'll never forget. I wish I'd kept a copy of it where they sent that email around that volunteering was mandatory.
Oh, definitely. I remember that. By that time, I was in the TV department.
Like I remember
I do
thinking,
remember that.
how is it volunteering if it's mandatory? Like, and it was
Yeah,
without pay. They were making you volunteer to work without pay. Now, okay, that's fine, but don't call it volunteering if you're making
yes.
it mandatory. I mean, just crazy things like that. Just
It was crazy stuff. Yeah.
And I remember on a program, Francis saying something about, well, we were just having too much gossiping on the coffee breaks, so I did away with those. And I remember thinking, oh, Francis, like, are you kidding me? Like, that's breaking the law. You
Uh-huh.
have to have coffee breaks. Like, just nutty stuff like that would go on. I
Yep.
mean, craziness.
Right. And I doubt, any time that I was in the, like, if we had any, I remember there was a birthday, and then soon after I got there, there was like a going away party for someone who'd been there for a long
Yes, I
time.
remember that. Yep.
And when the women got together, it was not gossip time. That's phony. That too
It is
was
phony because people
that was
really were
over.
not gossiping about that place,
No.
but because they were so paranoid, they
Yeah.
thought everybody's talking about them. And that to me is what alerted me because when you have to be so secretive, that means that you've got something to hide.
Yeah, I like your phrase. How do you say it?
If
When
you've if you've got
you,
nothing to hide, then you hide
you
nothing.
hide nothing, right? And
Yeah.
the more I thought about that, because I heard you say that several years ago, actually, but it's very, very true.
It
It's
is.
very true.
I mean, I'm a very transparent person because there's
Yes, you
nothing
are.
to hide. I don't
Yeah,
have, any things that are in my closet. I'm very open about. I know what my faults are. I know what my sins are. I know what I've been forgiven of. I know, and if somebody asks me, I'll be more than grateful to tell them. That's why I get very annoyed with all the people, which I know some are from JSM, are always trying to pretend like there's someone else and friend me on Facebook. And
yeah,
I always say to these people, okay, I know this is a fake profile. If you just tell me who you are and what you want to know, I'll tell you. I'll be
yeah,
very open with you. I'm not hiding anything. I mean, I'm very open. So I
yeah.
don't
Yeah, you are.
understand those tactics. I really
And
don't.
I would like to add too. I don't forget that a couple of my daughters and I stayed with you,
Yes.
lived at your apartment for about a month. We shared the
Yes.
rent before Abby and I flew out to Montana.
Yes.
And I've seen how you are in even a deeper level of real life.
Yes.
And when someone is in their home, in their own home, I've seen you, and yes, you are very transparent. And I would say that there's no difference in how you are when you're living in the same apartment with you versus when would talk to you when we were still in the same office space at JSM or at a restaurant or anything like that. You are who you are. You've got nothing to hide. Why would you want to hide? You've just written a book that discloses many things that many people would hide. Right?
Yes. Yes.
You're very transparent, and so the idea
And
that
you are the same way. I mean, now you haven't been as open about all this stuff as I have, but there's been a reason. It's not that you're
right,
trying to hide anything. And
right,
I loved that time when you and Abby and Annie were there. I really and little Max, the dog, along with my two cats who really didn't like him very much. But
that's true. You were very gracious with your
y-
cats. I
yeah,
forgot about that.
I love that.
Yeah,
And I remember like nobody can make coffee like you. Like nobody. I have
oh,
not had a cup of coffee as good as that for
oh, thank you.
several years. I'm telling you. I really loved having you guys, and Abby would play her guitar, and it just I actually found that a very healing time for me.
Praise the
Yeah,
Lord.
I really did. And I look at it, fondly, very
Well,
fondly.
anybody who loves you, anybody who knows you, I think about these others that have shunned you, that have played that whole family that with whom you were so close, and you had done. The thing is, when you're saying I treated them kindly, that's another thing where I'm saying, okay, that's an understatement. We're talking about real generosity, where you went out of your way for these people. You bought them things. One of the people that turned on you, I believe, just within that same month, you had organized a birthday party for them, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Someone there in donor services, but these kinds of things, the girl that used to be in your office, you had bought many things for her too. She didn't have a lot of money. You were very gracious and giving, and there has to be a lot of guilt in these people, and on a
I
cosmic
don't think
level.
so. I don't think so
You
because
don't?
I think um, I think in their thinking they thought, oh well, she's not what? How
Do
do
you
they?
think they really bought the Kool-Aid then? Do you think they
Yeah,
really
I do think that they bought the Kool-Aid, and I do think that they think that that I don't understand. This is what I kept getting, that I don't understand the message of the cross. I mean, I don't know how anybody ever got saved before Jimmy Swaggart, because I mean,
Oh yeah.
how did the apostles manage without the message of the cross? Really, I don't know how have all these people all through these centuries? How has anybody ever been saved?
Absolutely. I
Because
know
I
it.
mean,
Right.
nobody understood the message of the cross before Jimmy Swaggart, and that's how they preach it. And in fact, they're alienating families from one another. I get so many emails from people saying, well, so and so, they've always been a Christian and we've always been Christian, but now that they're listening to Jimmy Swaggart, they don't want to have anything to do with us because they tell us we don't understand the message of the cross.
Yeah,
Does
really.
that make any sense to anybody?
I
But
know, it's
but
so sad.
that's how they justify it, and that's
Yeah.
what Francis said to me. Well, Michelle, I just don't think you understand the message of the cross. Well,
Yeah, and it's an inconsistent message. I just had remembered before my attention was getting onto them, and I was still in Missouri. One thing that I latched on about them was what I thought they were preaching was the message of the all sufficiency of the blood of Jesus,
Yes,
and
that's
I thought they
yeah.
were using the phraseology
That's
of
how
really the
I
same thing, but
yes.
it actually is not the case
It's not.
because sozo and soteria are both words that are interchangeable for sickness and sin. And I was concerned when I thought, well, I've never really heard them talking about applying the cross only, which they are trying to promote. And it's really not the same cross because they're not talking about the love and they're not talking about the commands of Jesus because there are no new commands. And they basically just give us
Yeah.
antinomianism, which would say there are no laws. But they're forgetting that Jesus gave commands. But the message of the all sufficiency of Jesus does not deride those that place their entire trust for healing in the blood of Jesus, and thereby will bypass medical usage when they feel to do so. And yet they chastised me and actually persecuted me and my daughter for doing that. Not to get on that whole
I
subject,
know.
but even what they called was the message of the cross is not the cross of
No,
Jesus,
it's
because
not.
Jesus died for all sickness and sins. And they completely embrace the medical realm, which I'm not chastising them for that, but they will deride you and they'll persecute you. And I was actually confronted
Yes.
in the TV department for
Yes.
making a statement in passing to one of the people while our computer was booting. And he was talking about an ailment in his body. And I said, isn't it awesome that Jesus will heal us, and we don't have to even know what it is, but he can heal us. And it was something simple like that. And then he said, oh, I've heard you don't go to doctors. And I said, well, actually, that's where the Lord has brought me. But that's about as far as that was. And about a week later, I was called into the office of the woman who had taken over the TV department, and she basically told me, not to ever talk about that again.
Yeah, it's
And here I'm working in a place that claims to be talking about the cross. Their cross is a different cross.
no,
It's a
because
cross Savior.
they say that, oh, there's a new car in the cross. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even what it claims to
It
be.
is
You're right.
not. It's not. And you know, we we actually probably should wrap up this one because we're at an hour and a half at this point, and
Okay.
we have really only touched the very, 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 very tip of the iceberg.
Michelle, we're at 2.5 hours almost.
No, we have been on the phone for 2.5 hours, but
Oh,
we've
that's
been
right. You're right.
recording
You're
for
right.
only an hour and a half. Yeah,
Okay, that's
yeah. So,
okay.
but let me see. I don't know if there's anything that we need to say to finish up. The problem is there's too much. Like there's so much to say, and we really could probably do 10 of these and not touch on it all.
Well, maybe if you want, and I don't know if this is going to be edited out right now or if this is going to fly, but what I could suggest is in order to tell the fact that the proofs are a fact, they're an absolute fact.
Oh, they're an absolute fact. And
Yeah.
I
And
think
how
what I'm,
Alfredo had been keeping them, which he did not tell me, and I'm glad that he didn't, because I probably would have included that in my email to you. And after he was fired, he asked the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to do with these? Because he had told me he could have brought them one at a time into his home, but he didn't want to defile his home, and for good reason.
Yes.
These were very trashy,
Absolutely.
trashy content. And the Lord allowed him, he didn't even hide it. He said, well, then, Lord, I will just take these out. He had just been fired by Francis right after you and I were. And he said, Lord, if you want me to use these, if you want me to take these, then you'll have to get these past the guard. And he just simply, he had them in his arms, he said, and he took them out. And then the rest of the story on that, I guess.
well,
But they
and
were
see,
very real.
had that not happened, this would never have come to light. Because even I remember the day that we were together, the very last day, and Francis asked you to go to your apartment and to retrieve any proofs you had, right?
Yeah, well, she only thought, well, I only knew of one. I didn't know that Alfredo had the others. So yeah, there was one proof, and it was with a woman in a very scanty bikini, and this was produced in the print shop. Well, I know that they were farming out some of their study guides to other places, but yeah, it was a very real proof. As far as I knew, it was the only one. And she said as soon as I got that back, then she would give me my paycheck, and which was for all the days that I was there. I never missed one day. I was the first one that worked through their all-night share-a-thon. I was the very first one that stayed there in the administrative offices until 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, but I just wanted to note that
Well,
and he brought the others out, and then he wanted to tell Jimmy Swaggart about that. Now, is there time now, or do you want to say that?
Yeah, I do want to touch
Okay.
on that because that's really
Okay.
important. Because, see, I remember being just absolutely flabbergasted that the only thing she was concerned about is getting those proofs, and that's so that they could hush up the whole thing. And the
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to say is we had, and Marianne, who would also testify to this, and I'm sure many others, saw that van that was covered in the same type of graphics. Remember the van that really had all that hip hop stuff on it that was always
I have heard
parked?
about that van. I do not remember seeing it.
Okay,
It could have been there.
I remember
Yes,
seeing it
odd
several
choice.
times, and I remember thinking
Okay.
it was odd because why would somebody, be at the ministry that had this smut all over their van? And
Right, it was right next to the school, too.
yeah, right
So-
next to the school, and it was parked there day after day after day. And
Because it would have been right between the school. I
Yeah.
just say that because it'd be right between the
That's
school
right.
and the shipping department.
and so this was the person that they were doing the work for, that they
Right.
were actually doing this printing for. It was a graphic designer, and he would bring his work there to have it printed. And the other thing I want to bring out that's very important, okay, the church is nonprofit. Okay, that's Family Worship Center. It's nonprofit. Well, Jimmy Swaggart Ministries is separate. Okay, the church. That's why they run everything through the church. Everything through the church, so that it's nonprofit. So we as employees are employed by the church, not by Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. Even though we are working for Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, not the church. And so
Right.
that means that we don't get benefits that normal people would get because we're technically, but not really, working for a nonprofit, right? So
Right.
when you go to
That's
get
right.
unemployment insurance or anything like that, they'll say no, it doesn't. You don't qualify because you're working for a nonprofit. When really, in fact, we're not working for a nonprofit. We're working for
That's
Jimmy
right.
Swaggart Ministries. But any equipment that they buy, anything that they buy, it runs through the nonprofit. Okay, so
Yes.
the printing shop, it is run through the church, and they paid $50,000, wasn't it, for that printer?
I don't remember.
I'm thinking it was 50,000 if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, they paid for this printer, and all that comes out of donor money, and of course it gets run through the church. The
Are
church.
you talking about the one that Alfredo had wanted to tell Jimmy Swaggart, don't buy it because I can fix the
Exactly.
one that you got? Okay.
Exactly. He told Jimmy Swaggart that he said, "Don't buy this because I can fix that one." He knew how to fix it very, very cheaply, but they said no, and they spent this $50,000 on this printer, and for their print shop. Well, all this gets run through nonprofit. All right, so this print shop is printing the Bible study guides and everything for Jimmy Swaggart Ministry, which is fine, and whatever else they print. Well, on the side, they've got, their ministry print shop, and then in the same building, using the same employees, they've got Starcom printing, which now you won't find it because now that once I came out with that on my website and it got out there, it disappeared. But and I don't know if they're still using that or not. But my guess is if they're not using that they've come up with another way to make money. But anyway, that's not what I want to say, but that's what I will say. Anyway, so here they are. They're using a nonprofit employee, an employee that is hired through the church as a nonprofit employee, okay?
Yes.
They're using him in the print shop, which is not just printing the Bible study guides and this and that and ministry material, but is printing smut. It's printing covers for hip-hop bands, which are, one depicts a satanic sacrifice, ritual sacrifice. They're printing, and the words, are just absolutely filthy. And then there's...
Oh, yeah, there's 4-letter words on many of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also they're printing a poster for an area a gay nightclub, and they're printing wine lists for restaurants and things like that. Things that they're preaching against. They preach against this, like Jimmy Swaggart says, "Oh, alcohol's never touched my lips, but it's okay that we make money from printing the wine list for area restaurants. That's okay."
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're using a nonprofit employee to print this. Which is a commercial business. It's a commercial business, and they're using nonprofit employee and nonprofit equipment. Yes, they're using things that were bought with ministry. People have donated in good faith, thinking this is going to preach the gospel. And what's it going towards? We're printing soft porn, I guess is what you'd call it.
Yes.
And
amen.
So I think that's important for people to know, because I know so many people have said, "Well, so what?" Is this a huge deal? It's not even ethical, and I bet.
Well, you know what, Michelle? There are a lot of people that do comment on various things that you produced. I do believe there are a lot of totally unsaved people that have a very evil agenda, because a true believer would never ask that question.
No, you're right.
So this is for the benefit of the true believers. Anybody that wants to play a game and ask a foolish question like that, to say, "So what?" obviously does not know the Lord. And if they're coming out with, unless they're being sincere and they're saying, "Well, what does this mean?" and they're waiting for the answer, then that's a sincere question. But still, if they're posting on what you produced with a question like that, their question is not even valid, because you want the believers to know the truth. That's what we want. We want those that are going to be giving their money under the auspices of someone that claims to be baptized in the Holy Spirit and leading other people into the baptism of the Holy Spirit, when nothing could be further from the truth, proven by these things behind the scenes. Then those are the people that we want this to know. So
absolutely,
those comments are really, in my feeling they are invalid comments because they're generated by people that do not know the Lord. They can't. They can't. You would never. Jesus is he's calling a holy people. He's holy. The Father is holy. And those who are truly following the Lord are called to holiness, a life of holiness. And we're addressing people like that, people who want to truly follow the Lord. They will know those things. And obviously, this is a criminal. This is in the kingdom. This is a horrible thing that's going on. Not just for what it is, but how it contradicts, how it's siphoning money out of people who are not allowed to know the truth on it.
And here's the interesting thing, because people always say to me, "Oh, those were a few rogue employees, and I'm sure, Reverend Swaggart dealt with it." And even on their radio show or whatever, somebody had told me that they said, "Oh yeah, we've dealt with that. We've fired those people involved." And that ticked me off so bad. Like, how dare you? How dare you drag my name through this and say that I was involved in that? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, that infuriates me. Absolutely infuriates me.
One of the Wednesday night messages that he preached against us. I don't remember what the comment was. Again, all of this is just such a devastation to even go through when I'm past the thing that, okay, they're not real Christians. I'm way past that. But like you said, how they drag your character, your heart.
Yeah, it's like they make it seem like, oh yes, we did have that problem with the printing, but we fired those involved. No, you didn't. In fact, I think that Caleb got a promotion, and he's still over the youth. As far as I know.
Well, I remember soon after it happened, the thing with working for that organization, there are no passwords. Only a few people at the top were allowed to have a password over their email. So if you had access to the email in a public venue through your own computer, it was pretty easy. And I remember a couple of nights after that happened, I said to you, "Hey, Michelle, I bet you we could access some of the people's email." And you did. And you...
well, I did that for my protection.
Yeah, but you got a copy. You saw an email from Jimmy Swaggart, to Jimmy Swaggart, about the printing issue. And his response...
And I think it was Nikki asking, well, what do we do? What do we do now? And they said, basically, this was after we were fired and after this had all come to light. So nobody can say Swaggart didn't know, because he knew full well, because number one,
it's
Alfredo...
Time to do a new direction. Let's do a new direction. Wasn't it something like that?
Well, I can't remember. I've got to find that email because I still have it.
Oh, okay.
But first of all, Alfredo went to him, and so Swaggart knew exactly what was being printed. Second of all, after they fired us, because we knew about it, not because we'd done anything wrong, but because we knew about it, then, this email gets sent, well, what do we do? Because we've got these jobs that need to get done. Like, well, what do we do, basically?
Yeah, they had outstanding orders from that
They
guy.
had outstanding orders, yeah, and he says, well, go ahead with those.
Yeah, I remember that. Well,
so he must have been really broken up about it. He must have been really just devastated about it.
Oh no, it was like he knew. He was already in the know. Okay, let's do this instead. He already knew that they were printing it.
Absolutely.
I remember that. He said, I think it's time that we take a different course. Like, okay, let's have a different approach. He absolutely knew about it.
Yeah.
And Alfredo, when I heard that he had more proofs, I thought, well, first, that's great. He told me he had been putting them up on the shelf. He felt to keep them. He didn't know what he was going to do with them. And then, but then when he told me, he said he had a staff. I had not seen them yet, but he had taken them to a lawyer friend that he had. Told him how he had been fired, and the lawyer was not in very good health. And he advised Alfredo to just, he felt badly, but he didn't have any viable course for him to take other than just find something else to do, though at this time, again, a wife and 3 kids. But then Alfredo said, well, I want to write a letter to Brother Swaggart, and I'm going to send him copies of some of these. And I said, oh man, Alfredo, when they find out you've got those, your life could be in danger. I mean, I felt concerned for him, but at the same time, I thought, but if the Lord's leading it, the Lord will protect him.
We have reason to say that too. We're not going to get into that here, but we have reason to say that. That's not out there. That's not exaggerating.
Absolutely. And so he wrote a letter to Jimmy, and I had advised him on that print shop, the print equipment thing. He wanted to get a letter to Jimmy about that. And I said, wow, the only way I can imagine you can see him is on a Saturday morning. So he had done it for that, and now he was going to do the same thing for this. And he wrote a letter. I cannot say I read the letter, but Alfredo was definitely a man of his word, to put it mildly. But he wrote a letter to Jimmy explaining to him what happened. By this time, Alfredo was pretty much 80-90%. His hopes of Jimmy Swaggart being who he had always thought he was were pretty much dashed.
Yes.
But he wanted to know for sure. So he wrote this letter, sent him a couple examples of the proofs, because in case Jimmy didn't know. And he wanted to make sure that Jimmy knew that this whole thing had happened, and as a result, Alfredo had been fired, and now he and his wife, his family, were going to be homeless and without a job, and he wanted to make sure that Jimmy knew. And he never got a response from Mr. Swaggart.
No.
Not one.
No. But...
And soon after that, I believe he gave you the proofs, I think right after that.
Because I remember him saying that, if you can, I remember him saying, well, I trust you, and if, do what you want. If you want to expose this, go ahead.
Yeah, and I remember going over to your apartment, and I literally just took pictures with my phone.
Yes.
And you had a website, so I said, here, if you want a scanner, which was a Goodwill scanner from Missouri, $4 scanner. I said, here, you go ahead and use this. In fact, you can have it. And so that's the rest went. But
and I still have them.
Oh, do you? Oh, the proofs. Yeah, you don't have a scanner, do you?
No. No. I have a much better scanner now.
I'm glad. I do too now. But yeah, that was funny how the Lord used. He was allowing us to do what He wanted us to do in spite of real strains, financial strains, threats, an oppression, so much. But at the same time, I felt like I was experiencing in a cosmic way, though, what it is like to work for the Lord, and to also be persecuted, and also what it's like when other Christians, when the Lord talks about people that would turn away, or will you love me more than them? Are you willing to suffer on account of my name? Are you willing to lay down your life for your brother? And what we saw in this whole situation, we saw some sad things where people were saying, no, I'm not. It's not worth it. I'd rather keep my job. I'd rather keep my status with this group.
Yeah.
I'd rather, it was sad.
Oh, it was
because there's
devastating.
Eternal consequences.
Yeah.
For poor choices like that.
Yeah, there was so many people that really made that choice, made that conscious decision that no, I'm gonna turn my back on what I know is right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, because it's too difficult. It's too difficult to stand, for the truth, basically.
And what will they do when it comes to will you die for the sake?
Well, they won't. That's the thing. They won't.
They won't.
They won't. And
they would. People that would talk to me before you could tell if they weren't actually shunning, they didn't want to be seen with me. But there were a couple. And I knew, it was like I could see through the eyes of the Lord, where He knows if we are willing to suffer on account of our love for him. He watches us with such intense and deep love. Like, wow, you're willing to stand up for me. And there were just a few people that I could tell they're not even afraid. They're within they can be seen on camera, they can be wherever, and they're not afraid to talk to me. You know what I'm talking about, Michelle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There were a few.
There was a very few. Actually,
A very few.
I know afterwards, I didn't, hear from anyone from the ministry, and in fact, they had been warned that, if they talked to me or whatever, they'll be fired. And I literally would experience, because I lived just a block away from the ministry. You lived, unfortunately for you, you lived on the ministry grounds, but I did not.
Yes.
Thank you, Lord, for leading me, because I knew that I wasn't supposed to. I knew that I wasn't supposed to live on the grounds. But anyway, but because I was in such proximity to the ministry, I would constantly run into ministry people afterwards, and it was painful because there'd be whispering. People would literally run away from me, like run. It was the strangest thing. And I remember
I was at Walmart with you that time, and I remember it was one of the members of that family, I believe.
Yes.
She had terror on her face, like,
yes.
if somebody's watching me and they think I spoke to you, my job could be in danger.
And it would be. It would be.
Yeah.
But it was really, really strange. But that just persisted afterwards. But I remember, I don't know, it was not too long before I left Louisiana, and somebody, and I'm not going to say who because this person would lose their job, but I remember them coming up to me and talking to me, and I said, wow, I said, you're talking to me, and they said, well, yeah, why wouldn't I talk to you? And I said, you are the only person, you're the only person, and they said, well, I don't understand what you mean. And I said, well, and I told her, I said, most people would not be seen speaking to me.
Yes.
And I will always remember this, because they said, you were so kind to me, I would never not speak to you.
Wow.
And that really, really touched me. Because
I wish I knew who it was. Maybe
well, I'll tell you, but not on
Yeah.
Because they would lose their job. I know they would lose their job.
Are they still there?
I don't know.
Okay.
But but anyway, but we should. We're almost at 2 hours here of recording, and there'll probably be very little of this that gets edited down, because I think most of what we said was, maybe all of what we said was extremely important, and I think that there's a lot more. There's a lot more that needs to come out. But
this is about enough, though. I mean, it's kind of traumatic. Not this stuff, not as much.
It's not it's not easy. Like I know I find it really difficult to even go back and visit it. And it's funny because I've got that stuff on my website. People will write to me and as if I'm obsessed with this, and as if I spend all my time on this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wrote that 4 years ago, whatever, however many years ago, and I never think about it, anymore. It's like they think that all I do is sit around and think about Swaggarts, and which is kind of funny to me. But I guess because it's written there, they think that, and because I once in a while I'll do an interview, they think that I'm just. That's all I do is sit around and I brood about it, and it's like, oh my gosh, you people need to get a life.
Yeah. But seriously, they don't understand though, when just as David was called out to battle, and he went out there, ostensibly to bring food to his brothers, but as soon as he recognized that there was an enemy whose agency was not from the Lord, he went at it with a purpose until the job was done. So I will never let anybody despise my calling in going down there. And it was no failure. It was the Lord using poor decisions on their part which some would say, oh, fired, you were fired. Yeah, I was let go twice and actually recalled after one. Anyway, that's another
Yes,
story.
and the
It was
thing
by
is,
the Lord. I was called there as much as any missionary. You were called there.
absolutely,
This was not our idea.
they
And the Lord is intent about having this kind of darkness exposed
and you know
for
the
a very real purpose.
the thing is, like, France's secretary said to me, this has nothing to do with your work. And I said, oh, I know that. I mean, I had just gotten a raise. It's like you don't give somebody a raise and then fire them. Like, it was totally.
I didn't know she said that to you.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, but
Well, of course it doesn't. I mean.
oh, I know. I mean, it's like crazy. It was just nuts.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, yes, in one way, I am committed to telling the truth. And if people ask me for an interview or whatever, I do that. I am very vocal about it because I believe that it's important to be honest about what I saw and about what that ministry is about, because I don't
Yeah.
want anybody, I would never want anybody to go through what I went through
Oh, I know it.
and
Well,
what you went through.
Paul talked about being in many perils, many dangers. Peril is a very dangerous situation. And one of the dangers that he spoke of was false brethren.
Absolutely.
He warned about
Absolutely.
them. He named them.
Yes.
Jesus warned about them.
Yes.
Jude, they're serious business. They are reasons for huge flashing lights and caution signs and warning the people for very specific reasons. So this is not child's play. It's not broadcasting fun. This is real serious spiritual business that the Lord has called us out to do. And for those who will be warned, then praise the Lord. But there's danger involved for those that want to go past the warnings.
Absolutely.
Send their loved ones there. Send someone who's just brand new believer and loves Jesus. I warn you. I do warn you. There's danger if you send them there.
Yes. Yeah, that's an understatement. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's not just us that's saying this. There's an army of people that have had these experiences there, but they're too
Yes.
afraid to speak out. And there's good reason. There's good reason that they're afraid to speak out. But I've been contacted by them. I'm sure Dolly has. And there's also written things, newspaper articles, all sorts of things that are out there. I've put some of them on my website, but there is so much more. If you can ever get a hold of a book called, what's that book called by, by Barbara? It's so expensive. It's like $100 on
Black Man Rising or Dead Man
Dead
Rising.
Man Rising, yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy Swaggart, I don't know. But anyway, I've got the book and I've read it, and it's like, it was actually kind of healing, because I thought, oh my gosh, look at all these years ago, people went through the exact same things.
Really?
But yeah, have you not read that book?
I've heard of it. I've never actually read it. Actually, I think I've got a title of it here.
You
It's
should.
a very unusual title.
It is
Dead
an
Man
unusual.
Rising on Black Light as a Weapon in the Culture Wars.
Yes, and
by
I wish
Humphrey
that she
Miller.
had named it differently, because actually it's very well written. She was an intelligent woman, very intelligent, and
And she used to work for them, didn't she? I
yeah.
heard.
Oh yeah. She was like, yeah. She worked. I think she was secretary.
His secretary,
Jimmy,
I thought, or a
So,
translator or
but
something. Or a
yeah, what she has to say is really interesting. But it's a very difficult book to get. She's dead now. And the book is like, I don't know. I think the very lowest price is $100 on Amazon to get it.
Yeah, I know it's
so-
very expensive.
I know, someone sent it to me, otherwise I wouldn't have had it, because it was even more than 100 when I was looking at it. It was like $150, and I thought, there's no way I'm
Yeah.
spending $150 on a used book. But
yeah, seriously.
But anyway, yeah, it's worth the read. But let's wrap it up here, and we will do another one. I'm going to stop recording, and
Okay.
we will do another one. Just a second here.